Welcome to Private Club Radio, your weekly source for industry education, news and discussion. Broadcasting from Tampa, Florida, ladies and gentlemen, here is your host, Gabriel Aloisi.
Hey, good to be back at it with you here on Private Club Radio, part of the Golf Radio Network. We now have 3 shows on the network. This show, which happens every Monday, Private Club Radio. Hopefully you're tuning in. And we've got Hashtag Wednesday Match Play every week with host Ricky Potts, who's down at Tiburon Golf Club in Naples, Florida. And now our newest show, Golf Club Talk UK, hosted by Leighton Walker of Burford Golf Club and Eddie Bullock of Eddie Bullock Golf Consultancy. He's also the president of Goodwood Golf in the UK. And those guys are bringing an intriguing behind-the-scenes look at golf club management in the UK, speaking with some really excellent guests. I recommend you head over to thegolfradionetwork.com. Check out this family of podcasts because there's something to keep you busy on your next drive to work, the next time you're working out at the gym, taking a walk with your dog, shuffling papers in your office. We're here for you each and every week here on the Golf Radio Network. Thanks for joining us. Now, this week, we've got some great guests here on Private Club Radio, Jonathan Grebow and Michael Plotnick of Ridgewood Real Estate Partners. We're going to be talking about land issues that private clubs have faced across the country and how they've helped solve those problems. Alongside of Peter Nanula and Concert Golf Partner, those 2 companies have teamed up to help clubs with real estate issues. It's an intriguing conversation. They're a lot of fun, very entertaining, and I think you're going to enjoy this edition of Board Chats.
And now it's time for Board Chats, presented by Concert Golf Partners. A behind-the-scenes look inside real boardrooms with special guest Peter Nanula.
Welcome to another edition of Board Chats presented by Concert Golf Partners, where we chat with actual board members and staff of equity member-owned clubs around the country. We're talking real-world experiences in the club boardroom, dealing with board strategy and management issues. It's your behind-the-scenes look inside the boardroom, and brought to you always by Concert Golf Partners, who bring capital and operating expertise to preserve and enhance private clubs. We're joined, as always, by Peter Nanula. Peter, refresh our memories on who Concert Golf is and what you guys do.
Yeah, good to talk to you, Gabe. I'm sure most of your listeners know who we are at this point, but we are longtime owners, operators of private country clubs. We invest in private golf and country clubs all over the U.S. We consider ourselves a club hospitality firm with lots of capital.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're here today with Jonathan Grebow and Michael Plotnick of Ridgewood Real Estate Partners. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us. Hi, Gabe. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks so much for being here. Jonathan, I want to start off with you and just if you could give us a little background on yourself and some of the real estate history that you've had, that'd be great.
Great. So I started in the real estate business in 2001. I was educated at George Washington University in Washington, D.C., where I studied public policy. But in 2001, I decided to join the family business, which was a real estate development business where we specialized in buying and selling land and doing the land entitlements, which is basically the zoning and approvals required in order to get in order to be able to build houses. So I was originally joining the business to help raise capital because that was my first job out of college. But from there, I kind of fell in love with finding land deals, and I left the capital raising to my father and set off starting to look for deals.
Nice. Well, how'd you make your way into the golf industry then?
Well, I was a member of a country club that was struggling about 10 years ago in central New Jersey. And on my way out the door from that club, it was putting itself up for sale. And I knew from my experience that club was zoned for single family homes. So I tried to buy the deal. The club, in their infinite wisdom, didn't know Peter yet, so they decided to sell to somebody else. And But what it did is it showed me that there was an opportunity to buy golf courses to do redevelopment, because what they did was sell to a golf operator and then take the old pool and turn it into houses, which they sold to Toll Brothers, and it was a very successful transaction. So that's how I got turned on to buying golf courses.
Yeah, that's a good little taste right there. Mike, I'd love for you to give us a little bit about your background, if you could.
Sure. I, too, went to the George Washington University, which is where I met Jonathan about 20 years ago. We were college buddies. I, after college, went back to Boston, which is where I grew up, and met a girl who happened to be from Jersey. At the same time, Jonathan was in the process of taking the family business from more friends and family money to more institutional money, and he needed someone with a finance background, which was my background. And he asked if I had an interest in moving to New Jersey to come talk the institutional talk at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Fast forward 15 years now that we've been together, I've kind of morphed into head of all acquisitions for us, in addition to overseeing our asset management. But we've been together almost 15 years at this point.
Wow, that's a good partnership, it sounds like. I went to American University, by the way, so not too far from you guys over at GW.
Absolutely.
Nice.
Well, Peter, I know we're here to talk about Philmont Country Club up in Philadelphia and how these gentlemen were involved in that deal with Concert Golf Partners. So I'd love to turn it over to you and let you take it from here.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think just to frame the whole discussion with the Ridgewood team today, Gabe, I thought, the background for me is that we see, I go into a lot of boardrooms of equity clubs every year. We see a lot of private clubs that have extra land, or they have 54 holes and only need 36, or they only have 36 holes and they only need 18 to serve their members well. So there seems to be a fair amount of this situation in clubland where there's just sort of some excess acreage, but the board members of these clubs don't always know exactly what to do, or they don't have millions of dollars laying around at the club to go spend several years getting entitlements and permits and these sorts of things.
Right.
So the Ridgewood folks specialize in this kind of stuff, especially in these golf adjacent land situations. So we've been involved in 2-3 of those now with them, and it's been great for the memberships of our clubs. And I just thought, boy, if we could get them on to talk about sort of how the real estate side of this works, thought that would be fun.
That's awesome.
So yeah, Gabe, I guess the first one where we started to work with Ridgewood was Philmont Country Club in Philadelphia. I guess maybe Jonathan and Mike, good place to start would be a little bit about the history of this club and their real estate situation before they met either one of us, because you know it pretty well.
Sure. So Gabe and Peter, we had been tracking the Philmont Country Club for years as they were trying to sell off a piece of the property. And that piece of the property is what they call the South Course. There's 2 courses there at Philmont. The North Course, which is a really great track, traditional northeastern type course through the trees, good distance, just a really nice course. Well, the South Course was sort of, the stepchild, and it just was, it was on a great piece of property, a major intersection, but didn't have the same appeal. And the club knew that, and they were trying for years to sell that South Course or a portion of that South Course to a number of different builders. But what happens when these clubs try to do it on their own, there's a couple of things that happen, rather, when they try to do it on their own. And the first thing is they don't understand the coordination that it takes between the owner of the club and the land that's being developed. And by that, I mean, in a couple of different places. In the coordination with the town, in the amount of acreage that you need, because the rest of the golf course can count as your open space. In the coordination for driveway entrances, amenities, sewer, water, the irrigation system, all of those things are so interconnected that it's really hard to just cut off a piece of property and say, here, take this, go develop that, and sell it for cash. And as we get into talking about more of the deals we've done with Peter, that's really a common theme that by working together, we've been able to solve.
So, Jonathan, let me jump in. And Gabe, if you have questions, please do also.
Certainly.
Jonathan, I'll often meet boards, though, where you've got some very successful business people around the table. Usually there's at least one lawyer. Sometimes there's people on the board who are in the real estate business or have done lots of real estate in their careers. And they'll usually say, oh, no, we got some big-time real estate people involved in our club, so we've spent the last 3 or 4 years looking into this opportunity to sell off some acres. So I guess the simple question is, why shouldn't the board just do it themselves?
Well, I hope that those other people, those experienced people, probably have day jobs as well. So one is the amount of time it takes. 2 is the amount of capital it takes, which is really probably 1 and 1A is the capital needed. And we're talking millions of dollars in order to get these properties from golf course to just the permits in order to be able to put a stick in the ground to build a home. So time and money. They all have know-how, and I'm sure they can figure it out and hire the right people, but it's time and money.
Yeah, this is a full-time job for us. For these board members who, as Jonathan pointed out, have jobs and frankly can't commit, the hours and the resources to go into public meetings and everything else. It's very challenging for these boards to do it on their own.
Right.
All right. So let's go back to Philmont in Philadelphia. So what had this board of this, long time, 100-year-old member-owned club been doing to try to slice off this piece of real estate? And then what were they encountering?
So what they did when they tried to slice it off, and they had the right piece of property and the right geometry of the land to carve off. But there were 2 things that the builders encountered when they were trying to do their due diligence and underwrite the project. The first one, and most importantly, was the environmental condition of the property. Historic pesticides have been found on, we've worked on 8 golf courses. 7 out of 8, we have found contamination in the soil, all from historic pesticide use. Most of it is arsenic that was found in these pesticides up until the middle to, I guess it was the 60s. I think it's the 60s or the 70s. You were allowed to use a pesticide, and it turned out that the pesticide had arsenic in it, which was then banned.
Oh God!
Right, but it's actually a pretty easy contamination to deal with, because one of the things that it's good and bad. Arsenic, once it is in the soil, does not move, so it stays put. But so over time it doesn't go away. But if you know what you're doing, and we have a lot of experience in dealing with these environmental issues, you need to move it. And if you can move it and mix it, which is allowed by almost every state in the country, you can very easily deal with it. But the issue is you need more land, right? So if you have contamination on 60 acres, which is what happened at Philmont, we have the ability, because we are a partnership that is working on all 250 acres of land. We're able to use a lot of that open space, in particular in Philmont. We are rebuilding the driving range, and we are going to have a dirt moving operation between our 60 acres of development and the 10 or 15 acres of driving range. And we're able to really work the soil and work the process with the Pennsylvania DEP to come up with a remediation plan. But we needed to utilize the entire course in order to get the math to work and the state DEP to understand the process.
Yeah, so you're saying the board, sorry, Mike, you're saying the board may have been running into this environmental arsenic issues, but they didn't know what to do about it?
The builders were running into the problem, and what they wanted the board to do was basically just continue to lower the price and lower the price on the land in order to pay for the removal of dirt. And when you start to truck off dirt, you are talking about $10 million as opposed to $2 million. I mean, it's multiples of dollars in order to do removal rather than on-site remediation.
Okay. So you said there were two problems they were encountering. So environmental was the first.
And the second was that the township, by just carving off, say 40, 50, 60 acres of land, there were certain requirements under the township zoning code for open space. And what was important to the township was that the golf course remains in perpetuity as open space and can't be developed for anything more than a country club use. Golf course, the tennis, if you wanted to add other amenities that go along with golf. And by being in control of the entire process we have been able to work with the town and with you, Peter, to be able to offer a deed restriction to the town that says, after we get our approvals, nothing else can be developed on this course besides this 60 acres and a recreational use in the remaining acreage.
Right, but if you don't mind my asking, I'm putting myself in the chair of all these board members that I'm used to talking with.
Yeah.
They controlled their whole country club, 36 holes, clubhouse, the whole shooting match. Why couldn't they just do that, right?
Yeah, I'm sure. In a perfect world, they could do that. But the process is such a fluid and moving process that, once again, it goes back to that time and money. And you really need to be in this day in, day out to be able to make quick and smart decisions. And frankly, not have to worry about the criticism from the 200 members that are equal equity partners, right? In your clubs that you buy, a lot of them are, they're equity clubs. So there's, that one guy is only 1/200th of the ownership of that. And at any given time, they might need 50% or 2/3 or more, depending on their bylaws, to be able to okay the decisions that they're trying to make. When in this situation, if something comes up, I call you, we talk about it, and we go, great, this is a good business decision. We're able to make that quickly. And then the town also knows they're dealing with the decision makers.
Yep. That makes good sense to me, Gabe. In all the meetings I have, I would say I meet a lot of very smart board members, experienced, successful on a very large scale in their business. But one of the challenges they do have is, well, I had some good meetings about this topic, but now I need to form a committee or a subcommittee. And then we need to get a town hall meeting with 200 or 300 people present and see what 300 people think about moving this tee box over here or having our next meeting with this particular group because it hasn't been approved by the real estate committee yet.
Do you think they're just
hamstrung by all those dynamics?
And maybe they're just too close to it. It's like your baby.
Right. Just think about it from the standpoint of trying to redo a driving range. Right. How many people at that membership are going to have an opinion? It's too short. It's too long. It's too wide. It's too far from the clubhouse. Yeah. But in this situation, we're able to work with Peter and his team, who are very experienced in this. We have a simple meeting or a conference call. We decide on the geometry of the new driving range, and we're able to incorporate that into our plans and soil movement, give it to the contractor, and come up with a solution that we can implement onto a set of plans in a short period of time, and then go back to the township or to the DEP and say, okay, here's the solution. And when you have a board that needs to make that decision, it can get very controversial.
Yeah. Yeah, having an expert come in just cuts down that analysis paralysis cycle, I think, for sure. So let's move on to another club that you guys have worked on, which is Muttontown Club on Long Island. What was that club situation, guys?
Well, so it's pretty interesting. I grew up going to Muttontown. My grandparents were members at Muttontown, very long time members. And so I grew up. I spent more time at that place. It really had a special place in my heart there. But we actually had been working, had gotten a call on Muttontown, and they were in need of capital, and they knew that they had a couple of choices. And the first thing they actually looked at doing is, could they sell the land for a really large number and, really a large amount of money, and put cash in their pocket, in all of their members' pockets? And we spent some time, and because of my experience there, and we always do, but my experience there, we really laid it out for the club and the board, and we met with the board, and we said, look, your club is just not worth as much money as you think, because the zoning only allowed one house per 3 acres. So they were able to get, I don't remember, Mike, how many?
28 or maybe 29 total single-family homes on the entire golf course.
And it just wasn't going to create enough money. They had debt, they had member bonds that were owed, and we decided, we decided that together with the board, we said, this just doesn't make sense for you. And that's when Peter and I and Mike started talking about Muttontown, and Peter jumped in and was able to do what Peter does best, and that is explain to the board what he does, solve their financial problem, and then take away all their risk of assessments and all the other good things that I'm sure you've covered on previous podcasts. But what we did from a real estate is, because having jumped in this early, we were able to tell Peter that we think that there's a little bit of cash that he could make in order to spend at the property by developing 2 lots there. And we're talking about premier real estate on the North Shore of Long Island with 3-acre pieces of property that back up to a premier golf course. And we're just doing a really, well, nothing's too simple out there. It still takes time and money, but we're going to create 2 great building lots that are going to look out onto a couple of holes of Muttontown, create a little income, and really just be, fit in real nice to the neighborhood.
So again, this is Peter. I'll ask the question, putting myself in the board situation prior to us coming. They have this extra acreage. They have money, issues, although they're managing to get by as an equity club. Why don't they just carve off some lots and sell them off to make some money at their club?
They absolutely could have, but once again, we're going to. This I think would be even more controversial than changing a driving range, right? You got now. Oh, why do you choose that house? Who gets to buy it? Who gets to sell it? Who's going to list it? Well, I have a friend who's a broker. I know an engineer. There's just too many opinions to create what in their need of capital at that point was not going to be significant enough to get over their
long-term
debt issues. If you can't solve if you could solve your own problem by paying off all your debt, you might spend all the time to be able to do it. But in this case, it was going to pay off 10-20% of their debt situation and only be a short-term solution with a lot of opinions.
I would also say that, a number of clubs have done exactly that, Peter. They've gone and subdivided a couple of lots here and there. And what those clubs tend to do is pour it back, to fix their operating budget problems, not to do any capital improvements. And it just perpetuates itself that 2 years down the road, they no longer have that income, and they don't have the lots to sell anymore either. I think the goal of these things is, if you're going to invest it back into capital projects, it's a much better use for the club. But just to reduce the operating losses, it doesn't really operate so well for the club.
And one of the things that we also see when they try to do it on their own, we were been looking at another club, and they sold off a piece of property years and years ago. And what they did was they never thought about, well, maybe we'd have another piece of property to sell off later on, which they do, but they landlock their own piece of property. So when we look at this and we say to Peter, well, look, I think you have 6 acres, we could create 2 lots. we also look at what would be the long-term effect down the road. How do you protect your acreage, your access points, your steep slopes, your wetlands? All of that are important to take into account. And sometimes we find the boards need the capital and they're trying to do it so quickly they don't necessarily think of all these issues.
Yeah. No, so much to contemplate. And again, if it's not what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, and if you're too close to it, it can cause problems. Well, let's move on from the north part of the country to the south part of the country, and specifically in Lake Worth, Florida. You had the Fountains Country Club was a project. What was going on there, guys?
So I got a call. It was exactly, I guess I should go back a step. I think it was 2015. I had got an introduction to the board through their management company at the time. I think they were using Kemper Management at the time to run the club. We had another club that we were a Kemper client, and so I got an introduction, and I spent about a year working with the board, explaining what we do, giving them options, frankly, trying to pitch myself to buy land, do a joint venture, do what I do. And after about a year of going through the process, they chose to go another direction. And the direction they chose to go was to try to do it on their own by selling 2 pieces of property to a prominent home builder in Palm Beach County. And I couldn't fault them for what they did. They chose a good builder. I know they spent a lot of time thinking about it, but what they didn't take into account at that point in time was how much money it was going to cost them, the decisions they needed to make. And in fact, they obligated themselves to a couple of things that were probably, in hindsight, were a mistake, because what it did is it delayed the entire process, because they were a board, as we talked about previously a couple minutes ago. It just takes time there to make decisions. And so they're going through this process, and I kind of written them off. And it was actually 1 year ago. I was at a Halloween party, and my phone rings. It's late at night, or I actually got a text from Peter. It was late at night, and it says, "Have you ever heard of the Fountains?" And I respond back, "Of course. I spent much time trying to buy that place. Why?" He goes, "Well, I think there's an opportunity to buy it." So having a lot of history with it, and so we jumped right in. I think we spent 5 months. We spent 5 months working on the due diligence of on the land side, while Peter is working on the due diligence of the club side, and we were able to really make ourselves comfortable in understanding where our zoning was, what the pieces of property were developable, where we thought there were pitfalls, where we thought we could get hung up. We put together the right team, and we laid it all out, and Peter decided to go ahead with purchasing the Fountains.
So Peter, what was it about the Fountains that you saw there?
Yeah, Gabe, similar to Philmont up in Philadelphia. We had a club with a large amount of holes, but solid membership base, a great market, some great golf holes, some great amenities. But they had a real estate issue. They had excess land that they had already closed their 3rd course, the North Course. They were already working with real estate buyers, home builders, and they were trying to negotiate with those people while at the same time trying to break even as an equity club. But it costs money. You got to hire lawyers and engineers and all this stuff, and you're trying to negotiate with a giant home builder who's buying pieces of land from people for a living. So they find an environmental issue and they cut the price. And the board has to have 6 meetings about whether or not we should accept the new deal at the lower price, right? So those sorts of dynamics were going on at Fountains, just like we saw at Philmont. Great club. If we could figure out a way to solve the club's problems in the near terms, pay off their debt, deal with their member refunds, put some money into the golf course and the clubhouse, and fix the club right now, because that's what the members want. And then deal with the real estate issues over the long term, then we knew we'd really have something here. So obviously called the Ridgewood folks, and they knew the land, and off we went. So in a very quick period of time, we solved the urgent club challenges very quickly, and Jonathan and Mike have been hard at work on the land parcels at Fountains and have had, big success in a very short period of time. Just in the 7 months that we've been there, they already have under contract two of the land parcels there, and the club is up in membership, turning the corner, and members couldn't be more thrilled to not be dealing with this issue themselves. I got
one very important question for you, Peter. When you called these guys, did you say trick or treat?
It was Halloween. There you go. Yeah, speaking of today's date, yeah.
Yeah, as we record this, it's Halloween 2018 right now.
I should have said that. Good point.
I guess it was a treat, it sounds like. And
for sure.
Speaking of treats, are there any other treats out there? Or any private clubs with too many holes or extra land, guys?
Oh, we think there's a lot of them. It's just a matter of getting the board to understand that there's a solution for their problem. And a lot of clubs are struggling, with debt and want to do renovations. And it's a great way to create capital. It's a great way to get yourselves ready for the next, a lot of these clubs have been in business for 40 years. I mean, the Fountains is an early 70s, so it's almost, right. It's almost 70 years. It's an early, 50 years. It's almost 50 years. There's 100-year-old clubs, and they all need to figure out how to survive. And one of the things we're doing at the Fountains, part of our deal when Peter bought it, they knew we were going to do real estate development, Peter's going to invest in a resort-style pool, which is a major amenity that the club doesn't have right now. And he's going to create a more valuable club for himself and for his business, but he's going to give a great amenity. So we're going to add more housing to the market, to the property, but there's benefits for everyone, and we work hard to try to explain that to different clubs, and we're out there hustling and trying to find them.
Yeah, Gabe, that's what I would recommend to all these board members that I meet with and talk to on the phone is, if you have extra land, call the guys at Ridgewood Real Estate. They're easy to find on the internet. At a minimum, you're going to learn a bunch because they're real experts at doing this, and we're not as country club people. But they might be able to give you some good advice. They might have a solution for you, and perhaps we can both help a club.
I think what Peter says is accurate. We are more than happy to meet. Look, we're not getting every deal we go and meet on, but we sure have a lot of meetings. So at the very least, you're going to get a lot of good information from us. We had a meeting the other day with a board, and we sat around for an hour or two, told them what we did, gave them some ideas, showed them that we know what we're doing, that we're intelligent, we're willing to invest our own capital into projects alongside a club. We're willing to come up with solutions, and we spend every day working the process, working the project, and working towards a solution that creates liquidity for clubs.
At the same time, I would say we also recognize that maybe we aren't always the solution. And, there are multiple clubs we've met with over the years that we're there to lend our expertise, even if we're not the right answer, to help them get to the right answer and how to solve their problems.
Yeah, that's great, guys. I really appreciate you coming on here on Private Club Radio and sharing your experiences. One last question for you. What would you say the results have been working with Concert Golf, guys?
Well, so far it's been great. It's really when you say that there is a joint venture or a partnership, whatever you want to, whatever phrase you want to use that we put in documents, but it's truly a partnership. We both have an expertise that really works well together to solve a problem and from business standpoint, create a really successful transaction. And it's worked so well to each be able to come to the table and have a knowledge base to solve a problem.
When I first met Peter a few years ago at a golf conference, we recognized immediately there were a lot of synergies and value we could add to clubs. And And I think the clubs that are going through the process now are able to recognize that by having the partnership we've brought to the table, it's been successful for their club in addition to the business as a whole. That's
awesome. Peter, any final takes from you?
Yeah, no, I think we covered it all. These are great partners. It really works. You're bringing more expertise to the problem than I think we typical golf club owners have. And we've been doing country club ownership operations for 25 years. We learn something every day from the Ridgewood folks. So I would say if I'm a board member who's a part-time volunteer and has an important day job doing something else, you could only benefit from calling these folks and trying to figure out your land situation with them.
That sounds great. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me here on another edition of Board Chats presented by Concert Golf Partners. Make sure to check out their website at concertgolfpartners.com. That's going to wrap things up for this edition of Private Club Radio. I'll catch you back here next week. Until then, here's to your membership success.
Private Club Radio is brought to you by Concert Golf Partners, helping to preserve and enhance private golf and country clubs. Concert Golf has the capital, expertise, and private club hospitality experience to help upscale private clubs achieving long-term success and membership growth. For 25 years, Concert Golf has allowed private club members to focus on simply enjoying their club. Visit concertgolfpartners.com to learn more about the recapitalization process.